Chapter 968. Ning Lanlan watched as Ce pulled Yunjian's hand into the car before closing the door and stepping on the accelerator. They left the zoo with Yunjian. Wow, Jianjian is so happy. I really hope Jianjian can stay so happy. Ning Lanlan couldn't help shaking her head as she looked over. Of course, her words were laced with uncontrollable envy. Ning Lanlan was envious, but it did not mean that she envied Yunjian for having Ce. She was different from other girls. She was envious because she wanted the person she liked to love Yunjian as much as Ce did. However, Ning Lanlan knew that her senior Jiming had always treated her as a younger sister. Even so, Ning Lanlan did not want to give up. Ce drove the Lamborghini on the road with Yunjian. When they passed by a cake shop just now, Yunjian asked Ce to stop the car so she could buy a small cake. She knew that Xiao Yunju, Duanli, and Duanya loved cream cakes. Although it was no one's birthday today, Yunjian still picked a strawberry cake to bring home. It was a 3-day-long holiday for the Qingming festival, so she could have some fun at home. Just as she got home with the cake, Xiao Yunju, Duanli, and Duanya ran out chasing after each other. Jijia, Ce, Gij. Xiao Yunju, Duanli, and Duanya greeted respectively when they saw Yunjian and Ce. This cake is for you guys. Yunjian smiled and passed the cake to Xiao Yunju. Wow. Jijia, you're the best. Xiao Yunju took the cake happily. Your Ce, Gij bought the cake, Yunjian added with a smile. Ce, Gij is the best. Xiao Yunju held the cake with a grin. Yunjian smiled awkwardly. Why was she the best while he was the best in Xiao Yunju's heart? Before Yunjian could think about it though, Xiao Yunju went to Ce and said to Ce in a coquettish tone, Ce, Gij, you said you'll take us to the amusement park. How about tomorrow? Sure, Ce agreed without hesitation. Yay! Cheatsy, you're awesome. Ce, Gij is going to take us to the amusement park. Xiao Yunju tugged on Duan Li's hand happily and danced excitedly. As they chatted, Duanya, Duan, and Duanya had, Duanya, Duan, and Duan and Ya. Ce, on the other hand, held Yunjian's hand as they went downstairs. Just as they reached the staircase, Yunjian saw Yun-yi who was standing not too far away. Brother, Qing Yu's back tonight. She got off at Longmen City's train station. I'll go pick her up. Do you want to come along? Yunjian recalled when she saw Yun-yi. Just as Yunjian finished, Yun-yi answered, yes. After telling Yun-yi about it, Ce dragged Yunjian to Yunjian's room. Yunjian was puzzled as to why Ce had dragged her to her bedroom. Had they not been going to his bedroom all this while? Yunjian did not think too much about it. Just as they entered the room, Ce's domineering aura engulfed them. Steadying himself, Ce pushed Yunjian onto the bed. Yunjian felt her heart clench. She felt it clearly. The change in her heart. In the past, her heart was closed and no one could enter her world. Now, however, her heart was filled to the brim with him. Yunjian was about to kiss Ce back when Ce pulled out a transparent bra from behind her. As Ce held it, he suddenly went below her earlobe and whispered, Xiao Jian, do you want to wear it for me? Chapter 969. Yunjian remembered that she had kept it in the cupboard but took it out again out of curiosity. Although she was not wearing it, she could not help taking a few more glances at it. When Qin Yiru called her for dinner, she did not hide the underwear back in the cupboard. Yunjian had been wondering why Ce had pulled her into his bedroom just now. In the past, he had always pulled her into his bedroom. It was only now that Yunjian realized that this was Ce's plan. Just as Yunjian thought about it, her dark eyes still looking up, Ce's voice came from above again. Xiao Jian, you're distracted. As he spoke, Ce's breath was already on her neck. His slightly panting breath blew against her neck as his lips curled up slightly, his tone softening. You're so beautiful like this. So beautiful that, He wanted to meld his Xiao Jian into his bones so that she could only be his for the rest of her life. In spite of it, C did not say the latter part. After that, Ce tilted his head and his lips touched Yunjian's neck softly. Yunjian shuddered from the touch. She pushed Ce with her lips pressed together, but she did not push him away. Speak properly. I'm going to the train station to pick up Qinyu. Get up quickly, Yunjian said and pushed Ce again. Her eyes kept darting to the side as a blush crept across her cheeks. She dared not stare at him. She could clearly feel that a certain part of him was swelling as he pressed against her. With a gentle push from Yunjian, Ce stood up. She thought that Ce did not plan to do anything to her because he knew that she was going to pick up Qinyu tonight. Just as Yunjian stood up, he suddenly grabbed Yunjian's hand and pulled her to press her back against the wall not far away as he held her head and nibbled on it. Once the kiss was over, Yunjian felt a chill on her chest just as she caught her breath. She felt a large palm spreading the hem of her shirt from her waist, bypassing her bra and kneading it into a ball. Yunjian's cheeks were flushed. Ce had already let go of her just as she was aroused. His Xiao Jian was still young. No matter how much he could not control himself, he could not do it now. Ce encircled Yunjian in a corner and slowly tidied up Yunjian's clothes before pulling her into his arms. His tall frame was about a head taller than Yunjian. Xiao Jian, you have to grow up quickly, Ce told Yunjian calmly. The hidden meaning in his words was enough to make one's imagination run wild. Yunjian agreed, but there was a flicker in her heart. What was she going to do when she grew up? She did not want that. Xiao Jian, I'm going out for a bit. When I come back tonight, I'll bring Xiao Zhu and the rest to your Uncle Ge's house for dinner. We'll come over together after you pick up Qinyu. Qin Yiru's voice rang abruptly with the sound of the door being pushed open. Just as the door was pushed open, Qin Yiru saw Ce carrying Yunjian in the house. His tall figure was wrapped around Yunjian's petite frame. Even Qin Yiru blushed a little when she saw the scene. Qin Yiru was stunned for a few seconds before she closed the door and said awkwardly, I didn't see anything. Go on, don't mind me. As she spoke, Qin Yiru sprinted down the stairs. Yunjian, who was standing in the house, was stunned as well. She looked up at Ce for 2 seconds and tried to push him away, but he tightened his hold on her. She then said angrily, You're not allowed to enter my house without locking the door next time. Chapter 970. If anyone else had heard Ce's words, they would have blushed in embarrassment. Ce's words could easily be misunderstood. Nonsense, Yunjian snuggled into Ce's embrace, feeling the warmth of Ce's embrace and the temperature rising. Ce was just saying it. He really held himself back and did not do anything to her. Yunjian pressed her lips together as she snuggled into Ce's embrace. Her face was pressed against Ce's chest, but there was a faint, warm smile in her eyes. At this moment, her smile was not one of mockery. It was a knowing smile that came from the depths of her heart due to joy. Suddenly, she felt her head sink. Yunjian was snuggled into Ce's embrace. She could clearly feel Ce's hand on her head and gently caressing it as if it was the most precious thing to him. Yunjian did not have a driver's license after all. The security on the roads was getting better. Although it was not as good as the modern era, it was already very good for 1999. There would be traffic police patrolling the roads from time to time as well. To be safe, Yunjian let Ce drive on her behalf. She even called Yun-yi along when she left. Yun-yi sat in the back seat of the Lamborghini sports car. There was only a small space in the back seat, but Yun-yi did not find it cramped at all. He only wanted to see Qinyu now. How could he care about this? Are we there yet? Have we reached the train station? Yun-yi poked his head out and looked left and right, looking like a monkey in a hurry. Not yet, we'll be there soon. Yunjian pressed her lips together and smiled faintly. When they reached the train station, Yun-yi wanted to get off before the car stopped. Yunjian then accompanied Ce to park the car. There were not many cars in this era, and sedan cars were even rarer at the train station. Yunjian accompanied Ce and quickly found the bus stop. By the time Yunjian locked the car and walked to where Yun-yi had alighted from with Ce, Yun-yi had already returned with Qin-yu's luggage. Sister Jian. When Qin-yu saw Yunjian, she tossed her backpack to Yun-yi and dashed toward Yunjian. Yunjian gave Qin-yu a big hug and asked with a smile, "How have you been at home recently?" "Very good." Qin-yu had already wriggled out of Yunjian's embrace. As she spoke, she picked up the backpack that had been tossed to Yun-yi and walked forward while holding Yunjian's hand with a grin. Yun-yi, who was standing behind and helping to carry the backpack as soon as he got off the car, lowered his eyes. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Why did he not see Qin-yu pouncing on him like she had hugged Yunjian just now? Yun-yi held Qin-yu's luggage with one hand while he rubbed his head with the other. He could not figure it out, so he decided to stop thinking about it. The four of them went straight to Gu Yunjian's house. When they arrived at Gu Yunjian's place, they bumped into a boy with short black hair who was walking toward Gu Yunjian's house. Yunjian did not see the boy at first and did not pay attention. It was only when she caught a glimpse of him that she recognized the owner of the face. It was Guxian Ji. Yun-yi had met Guxian before. Not too long ago, Yun-yi and Guxian had become good buddies. When they first met Guxian, Yun-yi was nearly stunned, so he called out in surprise. Guxian, who used to have dyed his hair red, yellow, blue, and green and looked like a typical gangster, had dyed his hair back to black. He looked majestic and handsome from the back. Chapter 971. Guxian caressed his short black hair boldly and chuckled before asking in a silly manner, "What do you think? Does this hair color suit me? Is it cool?" As he spoke, Guxian struck a dashing pose as if he was the most handsome person in the world. However, everyone knew that Guxian was just joking. "Cool, cool, cool. Bro Guxian, this style suits you very well." Even Yun-yi exclaimed. That was true. Anyone who had seen Guxian's style in the past would think that Guxian's current style was not bad. Hee hee. Guxian scratched his head in embarrassment after being complimented by Yun-yi. "Let's go in then. I think Mom has already prepared dinner." Yun-yi chuckled. "All right, let's go in." Guxian quickly led the way when he heard that dinner was ready. Yunjian and Ce walked at the back. Yunjian was not in a hurry as she watched Guxian wrap his arm around Yun-yi's shoulders like they were brothers, walking together harmoniously. "Right, we have a flower bed at home. It must be blooming now. Do you want to go take a look?" Guxian was halfway there when he suddenly remembered this. Then he remembered that all girls liked flowers. Seeing that Yun-yi had brought Qin-yu back, he could guess something even if he did not ask anything. Hence, he blurted out. "Wow, you have a flower bed at home. Let's go take a look now." Yun-yi was just worried that Qin-yu had just come home and had nothing to give her. She was thrilled when she heard Guxian say that they had a flower bed at home. "Let's go, I'll lead the way." Guxian grinned and led the group to the flower bed. Spring was indeed the season when everything came back to life. Gu Yunjian's villa was extraordinarily large. The flower bed covered an 8-mile radius and it was extraordinarily beautiful. Yun-yi had already put down her luggage and ran to the flower bed to pick flowers for Qin-yu to please her. Since it was spring, the sun set later than it did during winter. The sun was hanging sideways in the sky, leaving a sliver of sunset behind. Since the flower bed was huge, Yun-yi led Qin-yu to the center of the flower bed. When they came out, the sky was already dark. Yunjian sat on a big rock while Ce stood beside her. His long fingers twirled around Yunjian's hair, playing with Yunjian's hair as his interest was piqued. He liked everything that belonged to his Xiaojian. When Yun-yi and Qin-yu came out of the flower bed, Qin-yu was holding a bouquet of colorful flowers. It was only then that the group went home. Just as they reached the villa's entrance, a luxurious Rolls-Royce was parked outside. Rolls-Royce luxury cars were rare to begin with, what more in 1999. In spite of it, Guxian's eyes twitched when he saw the Rolls-Royce. This is a Rolls-Royce? Even Yun Yi was stunned. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Just as she did so, she saw Gu Xian dashing into the house like a gust of wind. Yun Jian and Ce quickly went to stand at the entrance. Inside the house, there were two people standing in front of Qin Yiru. One of them was a middle-aged woman who looked elegant and poised. She was holding a bald man who was half a head shorter than the middle-aged woman as they met eyes with Qin Yiru. Chapter 972. Mother? Gu Xian's mother? In other words, Gu Yunjian's ex-wife? Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Gu Junjian hadn't returned home yet, probably because he was too busy in the army. Gu Junjian would come back in the evening, but it should be a little late. In spite of it, Yun Jian felt an indescribable sense of disgust when this elegant middle-aged woman was holding onto a bald man who was shorter than her and was even fatter and decked out in gold and silver. Although she didn't know why Gu Xian's mother would come back, Yun Jian had a feeling that something bad was going to happen. Aha! After hearing Gu Xian's shout, Gu Xian's biological mother, who was this graceful middle-aged woman, responded to Gu Xian with a flat tone. It was as if she saw Gu Xian, no different from seeing a stranger on the side of the road. From this, it could be seen that Gu Xian's biological mother didn't treat Gu Xian as her own son at all. Yun Jian also clearly saw that when Gu Xian saw his biological mother looking back at him with such a gaze, as if she was treating a stranger, his excited face instantly turned cold. Gu Xian's biological mother's surname was Hua, and her name was Yun. Hua Yun was Gu Yunjian's ex-wife, and also Gu Xian's biological mother. When she married Gu Junjian, it was only because the marriage was arranged by her family. As the saying goes, it was a marriage of equal social status. Therefore, Hua Yun and Gu Junjian had no feelings to begin with. In addition, Hua Yun couldn't stand that Gu Junjian neglected her because he was busy with the army, so she had an affair. As for Hua Yun's affair, according to the military marriage, she was supposed to be punished. However, the person she had an affair with was the short, fat, bald middle-aged man that Hua Yun was holding. This middle-aged man's name was Hu Chaochuan. Hu Chaochuan's uncle was an international business tycoon. He enjoyed a certain economic status in the entire world. Hu Chaochuan's uncle was the kind of person who could make the entire business world tremble with a snort. Of course, this was only for a portion of the people. Encountering someone more powerful than him, he could only bow his head in submission. Hu Chaochuan used his uncle's position to escape the punishment of Hua Yun's adultery. Gu Junjian was already considered one of the wealthiest families in Longmen City, but compared to Hu Chaochuan, they might not even be able to compare to the latter's finger. This was the difference between them. It was precisely because of this that Hua Yun betrayed Gu Junjian and abandoned Gu Xian to follow Hu Chaochuan. Now that he was back, there was indeed no good news. "Mom, why are you back?" Gu Xian's expression had calmed down as he asked Hua Yun. "I heard that Gu Junjian is getting married again. The bride's status is lower, so I came back to see what kind of woman could make Gu Junjian marry a lowly woman without hesitation," Hua Yun said elegantly as she placed her right hand over her left. Hua Yun came from a prestigious family, so she carried herself with the aura of a rich family's daughter. Hua Yun had called Qin Yiru a lowly woman with vulgarities just now, but she was pretending to be noble at the same time. Due to Hu Chaochuan's high status, he was well known internationally. Therefore, Hua Yun spoke as if she was still in a good mood. She looked at her old friends as lowly trash, while she was like a phoenix among men. After all, in Hua Yun's opinion, Gu Junjian was one of the more promising ones among this group of people. Gu Junjian was not even on the same level as her modern husband, Hu Chaochuan. Yun Jian forced a smile and looked coldly at Hua Yun and Hu Chaochuan, who were about to walk out of the mansion, as she said this calmly. After she finished speaking, Hua Yun and Hu Chaochuan were stunned, but they quickly reacted. Chapter 974. You. Upon hearing Yun Jian's words, Hua Yun turned around angrily, even forgetting her ladylike demeanor. However, just as Hua Yun turned around, Hu Chaochuan grabbed Hua Yun's hand. Then, Hu Chaochuan placed his fat hand on the back of Hua Yun's hand and took the opportunity to rub it a few times. Baby, don't be angry with people like this. Your health is more important. People like this are just jealous of our family's wealth. They're just good at talking. Let's go. When the time comes, we'll give them a big gift. Let them fight with baby. As Hu Chaochuan spoke, he walked away with Hua Yun, who was swaying her hips. Seeing Hua Yun swaying her hips as Hu Chaochuan took her away, Gu Xian's last bit of fantasy came to an end. He lowered his gaze and waited for Hua Yun to be helped into the car by Hu Chaochuan. The Rolls-Royce sports car gradually drove away. Only then did he let out a huge sigh of relief, his entire body completely paralyzed. Everyone present could feel Gu Xian's sorry state. Who wouldn't want their biological mother to love them, dote on them, and spoil them like normal parents? Gu Xian also wished for it. Unfortunately, his mother had never cared for him. Just as Gu Xian was feeling a little dejected, a pair of strong palms gently landed on his shoulders. Child, don't be sad. We'll be your family from now on. Qin Yiru's eyes shone. She looked at Gu Xian and comforted Gu Xian with a pair of eyes that seemed to be able to speak. Gu Xian only felt warmth in his heart. That's right, brother Gu Xian. We'll be your family from now on. Yin Yi also laughed and said. Under everyone's passionate gazes, Gu Xian finally nodded heavily. If Gu Xian's heart was completely cold when he saw Hua Yun leave without hesitation, then Gu Xian was like a pot of cold water that was boiling in a fire. After Gu Junjian returned home, nobody mentioned Hua Yun's arrival. After all, it was not a good thing. However, Yun Jian was secretly planning in her heart. Qin Yiru had never had a proper wedding in her life. She had lived the life of a rural woman all her life. Especially under Hua Yun's instigation, Yun Jian wanted to give Qin Yiru a grand wedding. She immediately contacted Snake Lizard and asked her to use her name as Kosha mercenaries to invite international business tycoons to appear on the wedding day of Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian. Of course, Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian didn't know about this. If they knew, it would be strange if they weren't scared to death. Yun Jian knew that her mother had always kept a low profile. Now, she just wanted to help Qin Yiru be high profile. A person's life was short. If she could be high profile, then she should be high profile. Perhaps it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The next morning, Yun Jian and Ce brought Xiao Yunzhu and the other two to the amusement park. The 3-day holiday of the Qingming festival was neither short nor long. During the holiday, Chu Ning and the others came back from the military academy once. Chu Ning also brought a lot of delicious food for Yun Jian. Other than that, nothing special happened. They went back to school immediately. This week, not only did Xiao Yunzhu's school have a spring outing, even Yun Jian's school had one. Even Yun Yi's high school had a spring outing at the same time. Chapter 975. Although Yun Jian's school had a spring outing on the same week as Xiao Yunzhu and Yun Yi's school, it was not on the same day. Yun Jian's spring outing was on a Friday. The homeroom teacher had informed the class about the spring outing early and told them that it was the last spring outing for them in their junior and middle years. After the spring outing, there would be a May Day holiday and they would have to start preparing for the middle school entrance examination. The middle school entrance examination was the starting point that determined an ordinary child's future achievements. It was also the most crucial test in life that the teachers and parents talked about. Especially in 1999. When the economy was not as developed as it was now and there was no popular internet. Children had no way out and the only way to succeed was through the middle school entrance examination. Under the homeroom teacher's repeated emphasis, the students in the class were already numb to it. Chen Sini was still on sick leave, so she would definitely not come to activities like the spring outing. However, Zhang Xiaofeng and Zhang Jian were there. When they queued up to board the bus to the location of the spring outing in the morning, Zhang Xiaofeng and Zhang Jian fought to carry Yun Jian's backpack. In spite of it, the boys in the class did not say a word, especially when they found out that Yun Jian was slashing God from Team Monarch. They walked out of the classroom in high spirits. Some of them even bragged that Team Monarch/God was in their class, making the other classes envious. The location of the spring outing this time was a mountain in Longmen City called Zhaobao Mountain. Zhaobao Mountain was not really a mountain where treasures could be found, but there was a temple at the peak where one could pray to Buddha from the bottom of the mountain. Of course, the purpose of the school's spring outing, other than the fact that they only needed to pay the bus fare and not the entrance ticket, was also the most essential reason, and that was, to exercise their bodies. Climbing from the bottom of the mountain to the peak was done by walking steps. There were at least a few thousand steps to climb from the bottom all the way to the top. Master, Grandmaster, slow down. I'm exhausted. Phew. Damn, these damn stairs, oh my god. Zhang Xiaofeng was carrying Yunjian and Zhang Xiaofeng's backpacks. There were 3 backpacks, one on his back and the other 2 in his hands. He was so tired that he shouted at Zhang Xiaofeng and Yunjian as he walked. Zhang Xiaofeng chuckled as he touched his nose and said, "Training your body. Good luck." By the time everyone walked up the stairs, it was already noon. The sun was shining brightly, and the weather was unusually hot. There were already many people standing at the top of the mountain, but just by looking at the uniforms, it wasn't hard to tell that other than Yunjian's school, there were also students from other schools here for the spring outing. Hey! Jianjian, you're here too. Yunjian had just gone up the mountain when a cheeky girl walked toward her. Taking a closer look, it was Ning Lanlan. However, Yunjian was not surprised. When she met Ning Lanlan back then, the latter had told her that her spring outing was coming soon and that her spring outing was happening today. It was just that Yunjian did not expect her spring outing location to be the same as Ning Lanlan's. Yunjian nodded with a squint. Why? Master, do you guys know each other? Zhang Xiaofeng did not know Ning Lanlan, but he looked at her in surprise before asking Yunjian. Master? Ning Lanlan walked over with a grin, shaking her head. She glanced at Zhang Xiaofeng and answered, "Yeah, we met not too long ago." Heh. Chapter 976. Mo Sun had actually spread Shan Zihao and Wan Xiao's indecent photos in Ning Lanlan's school. Yunjian raised a brow and pressed her lips together into a smile. It was a ruthless move, even more ruthless than killing Shan Zihao and Wan Xiao. Yunjian pressed her lips together, but her expression remained unchanged. It made sense though. How could Mo Sun, Siyi's subordinate, go easy on him? He must be as ruthless as he wanted to be. I heard that the school forced him to drop out. TSK. If you ask me, he deserves it. Ning Lanlan whispered into Yunjian's ear with a grin. As she spoke, Ning Lanlan feigned happiness. Senior Jiming is finally not playing with Shan Zihao this time. Ah, Jianjian, I'm so happy. Just as Ning Lanlan said that, Zhang Xiaofeng, who saw her whispering to Yunjian, came up to them. What are you guys talking about? You're so excited. Huh, it's nothing. Ning Lanlan waved her hand with a chuckle. When she was done, she introduced herself formally to Zhang Xiaofeng. I'm Ning Lanlan. Hello. Hello. Zhang Xiaofeng smiled and nodded at Ning Lanlan before pointing at Yunjian playfully. This is my master. As he spoke, Zhang Xiaofeng did not forget to turn around and point at Zhang Jian. This is my dumb disciple, Zhang Jian, haha. Just as Zhang Xiaofeng finished his introduction, Zhang Jian was indignant. Master, why am I your dumb disciple? Because you look dumb, aha. Zhang Xiaofeng's ability to tease was still as good as ever. After standing there for a while, it was time for their respective schools to assemble. Then I'll get going first, Jianjian. Ning Lanlan waved at Yunjian and ran off when she heard that they were about to assemble. Yunjian nodded and went back to the rest of her class. It would take some time to walk back to class, so Zhang Xiaofeng and Zhang Jian followed along. The homeroom teacher, Teacher Yu, was already doing a head count. After counting, there were 3 people missing. She had just looked around when she saw Yunjian and the other two walking over. "Hurry up, we're just waiting for the three of you. Let's gather first. After we're done, we'll go and take a look. After that, you're free to do whatever you want, teacher," Yu said. "Okay, teacher, we're coming." Zhang Xiaofeng appeared to be very lively. The three of them walked in that direction. However, just as Yunjian took a step forward, she suddenly felt a person jump out from the bushes. She already had a premonition before this person came out. The man was holding a machete. He rushed out from the bushes and fiercely stabbed towards Yunjian. Teacher Yu and the others who were standing a distance away saw the scene and felt like they had just witnessed someone committing a crime. For a moment, everyone present was spooked. Some girls even screamed when they saw the scene. "Yunjian, run!" Miss Yu shouted in fright when she saw what was happening. Just as Teacher Yu shouted, Yunjian waved her right hand and grabbed the hand of the person who was sneaking up on her from the bushes while her other hand slashed horizontally, forcing the man to let go of the machete in pain. Yunjian, on the other hand, had snatched the machete and pressed it against the neck of the masked man who had appeared out of nowhere. She asked with a raised brow, "Who sent you to assassinate me?" The students who were standing a distance away were scared out of their wits. Chapter 977. A moment ago, Yunjian and Zhang Xiaofeng were walking towards them. However, in the next second, a criminal suddenly appeared from the bushes and stabbed at Yunjian with a knife. How could the people present not be afraid when they saw this scene? They all screamed in surprise and stepped back. However, when they saw how Yunjian had subdued the thug and snatched his saber to hold it against his neck, those who stood on the peak of Zhaobao Mountain who had witnessed what Yunjian had done were rooted to the spot in shock. Zhang Xiaofeng and Zhang Jian were also stunned. On the contrary, Zhang Xiaofeng had been trained by Yunjian, so his reaction was quite fast. Seeing Yunjian put the knife against the neck of the black-masked person who wanted to assassinate Yunjian, Zhang Xiaofeng walked over and kicked the back of the person's knee. The person was forced to kneel on the ground with a plop. "How dare you assassinate my master? Damn it, do you want to die?" Zhang Xiaofeng said as he kicked the person hard again. At the same time, Zhang Xiaofeng pulled off the person's black mask. After the black mask was pulled off, the person's face was revealed. Yunjian narrowed her eyes. She saw that the assassin, who was dressed as a man and had short black hair, was actually a woman. It could be seen from her face that she was quite young. She was even about the same age as Yunjian. Zhang Xiaofeng kicked the girl. The girl didn't say anything and just turned her face to the side. Yunjian still had the machete against the girl's neck. Seeing that the girl didn't say anything, she pressed the machete against the girl's neck. "If you don't say anything, I'll kill you." These words weren't persuasive at all, but in everyone's ears, they were convincing. The girl who wanted to assassinate Yunjian looked to the side and didn't say anything at all. She didn't seem to believe that Yunjian would kill her. However, when Yunjian held the machete and slowly pressed the knife against the girl's neck as she spoke, the girl panicked. The knife went along the girl's neck and fiercely cut a certain part of her neck. A piercing pain came. The girl even felt the blood slowly dripping down from the pain. The girl was so scared that she turned her head and shouted at Yunjian, "You really dare to kill me?" The girl said so confidently as if Yunjian wouldn't kill her. "Do you think I dare or not?" Yunjian narrowed her eyes and smiled. Her smile had a majesty that made people tremble in fear. With that, Yunjian tightened her grip on the knife and continued to cut the girl's neck without hesitation. The teachers and students who were standing afar were scared half to death by Yunjian's action. Although Yunjian was Team Monarch Slashing God and an advanced Special Forces soldier and it was no longer a secret, everyone was still scared when they saw it. Moreover, even if Yunjian was an advanced Special Forces soldier in the military, she shouldn't be killing people for no reason. Don't, I'll tell you." The girl finally felt fear and she quickly spoke. Upon hearing that the girl had taken the bait and achieved her goal, Yunjian stopped in time. She was sure that she would have slit the girl's neck if she was a second later. Yunjian stopped and narrowed her eyes into a strange arc. She then said to Zhang Xiaofeng, "Bring her to the edge of the cliff. We'll talk there." Chapter 978. Seeing that Yunjian had asked Zhang Xiaofeng to carry the girl to the edge of the cliff, the teachers and students didn't dare to move. After all, Yunjian was a member of the military. What had just happened might have involved some military secrets, so the people present didn't dare to follow them. Zhang Jian gathered his 3 backpacks. He was a good boy and didn't want to follow Yunjian and Zhang Xiaofeng. At the edge of the cliff, Yunjian crossed her arms and looked at the girl in front of her. She narrowed her eyes, but there was a strange light in them. There was no one at the edge of the cliff. Because it was a steep cliff, no one dared to stand here to play. After all, if they fell off the cliff, it wouldn't be a laughing matter. Speak. Yunjian crossed her arms and looked at the girl in front of her. She raised her eyebrows slightly as she spoke. The girl stood at the edge of the cliff. She covered the wound on her neck and pursed her lips. "You should have tested my abilities just now. I'm very confident that I can kill you before you can escape, so if you're smart, you better not play tricks in front of me." Yunjian crossed her arms, but her lazy aura made people have no choice but to reevaluate her. The girl obviously had other thoughts, but when Yunjian said this, she paused. "My name is Gu Nianji." The girl finally spoke slowly. However, as soon as the girl said this, Yunjian suddenly flipped her hand and threw a knife at her. The girl who called herself Gu Nianji was slightly stunned by Yunjian's throwing knife. She turned around and dodged Yunjian's knife. Because she was standing at the edge of the cliff, Gu Nianji dodged the knife, but her foot stepped on the gravel at the edge of the cliff. Her foot loosened, and she almost fell off the cliff. Gu Nianji had some strength. She steadied herself and steadied her foot to prevent herself from falling off the cliff. However, when Gu Nianji saw that some of the gravel under her feet couldn't withstand her weight and were rolling down the cliff, she panicked and turned to look at Yunjian. However, she saw that Yunjian was still in the same lazy posture as before. However, what was different from before was that Yunjian's eyes were sharp now. She looked at Gu Nianji fiercely, and in the next moment, she shouted, "Don't try to stall for time. I'll give you 1 minute to tell me your identity and purpose. Otherwise, I'll kill you." Yunjian's tone was very domineering. At the same time, she flipped her hand and several throwing knives appeared in her palm. She looked at Gu Nianji coldly. "Don't play any tricks on me. You know it's useless. Did you hear what my master said? Don't try any tricks. It's useless." Zhang Xiaofeng shouted at Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji's eyes darkened. She knew that she had to tell them everything if she wanted to save her life. However, looking at Yunjian's expression, if she didn't tell them, she probably wouldn't be able to escape death. Therefore, Gu Nianji pursed her lips and said, "I'm an assassin from the Yulong continent. Someone posted a notice on the Yulong continent's leaderboard. Killing you will give you a large sum of money. So you tore up the notice and accepted the mission?" Yunjian finished Gu Nianji's sentence. Gu Nianji gulped and nodded. "That's right. That's why I'm here to take your life." The Yulong continent was a brand new continent. There were also assassins in the Yulong continent. Just like on Earth, the professions on Earth also existed in the Yulong continent. The only difference was that the people of the Yulong continent dressed like in ancient times. Moreover, the people of the Yulong continent could cultivate. Of course, when the people of the Yulong continent came to Earth, they couldn't use the abilities of the Yulong continent. This was because once they did, they would be punished severely, just like Lan Su. Chapter 979. Yunjian's slightly squinted eyes cleared instantly as her lips curled up. She looked even more alluring when the sun shone on her in the middle of the day, especially in the middle of the day where the sun was blazing like fire. "I've already told you. Can you let me go now?" Gu Nianji said to Yunjian. Her tone sounded as if it was only right. Do you really think I won't kill you if you tell me? Yunjian smiled. She was suddenly interested in this girl named Gu Nianji. Then what do you want? I'm just a third-rate assassin. I'm not a powerful person in the Yulong continent. It's useless even if you kill me, Gu Nianji mumbled. Yunjian narrowed her eyes but did not answer her directly. Zhang Xiaofeng, on the other hand, was stunned as he watched the scene unfold. Yulong continent? What was that? Why did he not understand a single word that his master said to this girl today? Just as Zhang Xiaofeng thought of this, Yunjian shouted at him, "Go tie her hands up and take her down the mountain." Okay. I love tying people up. As Zhang Xiaofeng spoke, he ran back to where Zhang Jian had been standing and took out a rope from the bag that Zhang Jian had helped him carry. He always carried this rope with him. This time, it could finally be of use. Zhang Xiaofeng chuckled. He ran back and immediately tied Gu Nianji's hands up, then used the rope to pull her. Gu Nianji was from the Yulong continent. Even if she did not have the cultivation power of the Yulong continent, her combat ability was not strong. Therefore, Zhang Xiaofeng tied Gu Nianji up easily. Don't tie me up like this. How can I complete the mission if you tie me up like this? Gu Nianji struggled for a while, but she was quickly tied up by Zhang Xiaofeng. Do you think I'll let you kill master? Ha ha ha, little girl, dream on. Humph. Zhang Xiaofeng tugged at the rope. Zhang Xiaofeng tugged at Gu Nianji. She snorted and turned her head away, ignoring Zhang Xiaofeng. Because of Gu Nianji's appearance, Yunjian and Zhang Xiaofeng applied not to participate in the following group activities. The homeroom teacher had no choice. After all, Yunjian was an advanced special forces soldier. More importantly, everyone present had witnessed Gu Nianji's failed assassination attempt on Yunjian. What if Gu Nianji assassinated Yunjian? Therefore, considering this point, the teacher didn't dare to say anything more. All the students in the class followed the class around. Yunjian asked Zhang Xiaofeng to tie Gu Nianji up with a rope and make her stand where she was. Finally, after the spring outing ended, Yunjian asked Zhang Xiaofeng to drag Gu Nianji down the mountain with a rope to prevent her from running away. Gu Nianji groaned the entire time, but she didn't do anything else. When Yunjian reached the foot of the mountain, she saw Qingyu who was standing not too far away. Qingyu had grown her hair long recently. Her beautiful black hair flowed elegantly in the wind. Qingyu was, of course, summoned by Yunjian. Just as she saw Yunjian and the others coming down the mountain, Qingyu came over and greeted Yunjian with a nod, "Sister Jian." Yunjian nodded and pushed Gu Nianji to Qingyu. "I'll leave her to you. Discipline her well." "Oh my, what right do you have to hand me over to her to discipline? I'm not your..." Gu Nianji was indignant the moment she heard this. She had only just finished her sentence. Yunjian cut her off. "Because you're my captive now." Chapter 980. Sister Jian, don't worry, leave her to me. Heh heh. I'll definitely teach her a good lesson. Qingyu chuckled and tugged at the rope that bound Gu Nianji's hands, dragging her away. Qingyu was here to take Gu Nianji away. Yunjian did not plan to kill Gu Nianji. She planned to keep her here. Although it seemed risky to keep Gu Nianji alive, Yunjian thought that she could get something out of the girl. She had a feeling that Gu Nianji was not as simple as she seemed. "Master, can I ask, where is the Yulong mainland that you guys were talking about just now?" Zhang Xiaofeng asked after some hesitation. Yunjian turned to look at Zhang Xiaofeng with narrowed eyes when she heard what Zhang Xiaofeng said. She paused for a moment before continuing, "A very fairy-like place. It's like a paradise." Yunjian made up a random story. "There really is a paradise? I thought Tao Yuanming made it up himself." Zhang Xiaofeng exclaimed in surprise when he suddenly recalled a prose he had learned. "Maybe," Yunjian answered ambiguously to Zhang Xiaofeng. By then, the students in the class had already come down from Zhaobao Mountain. The homeroom teacher, Teacher Yu, organized the students to stand together and do a head count. After that, the students got on the bus and went back to school. The spring outing ended just like that. To Yun Jian, other than Gu Nianji's appearance, there was nothing else worth reminiscing about. There must be a reason why Gu Nianji chose to ambush Yun Jian during the spring outing. After all, Yun Jian could not do anything to Yun Jian when she was in school. It was just that Gu Nianji did not expect Yun Jian to be so skilled. After the spring outing, it was back to the intense revision phase. It was already April. The senior high school entrance examination was usually 2 to 3 weeks earlier than other students who did not need to take the Gaokao, which was about half a month later. The middle school exams were usually held in the middle of June. Of course, the timing of the middle school exams differed from place to place. Longmen City's senior high school entrance examination began on June 18 and ended on June 20. Therefore, from now on, there were only 2 months left for her to revise for the middle school exams. Therefore, during this period, the homeroom teacher, Teacher Yu, became very strict. The students had also entered the intense revision stage. As the days passed, Qin Yiru and Gu Yunjian's wedding day was approaching. Other than Yun Jian saving Tang Qi Xian's boyfriend in the zoo last time, Tang Qi Xian went to Yun Jian's house to thank her and bring some fruits. Nothing else special happened. In the military, Gu Junjian knew that Yun Jian was about to take her middle school exams, so he did not arrange for Yun Jian to go on any missions. Although Gu Junjian had already decided that Yun Jian would go to the military academy, the middle school entrance examination was the most important exam in one's life. She still had to work hard to get a good score. There were still 2 months to the middle school exams, but the homeroom teacher asked the students to fill out a piece of paper to fill in their middle school exam aspirations. It was not yet time to fill in the actual middle school exam aspirations, but to motivate the students, the homeroom teacher asked them to write their own aspirations, stating their goals, which school they wanted to enroll in, and how many marks they had to achieve. Chapter 981. After filling in the application form for the middle school entrance exam and handing in this piece of paper, the bell signaling the end of school rang. It was a Friday, so dismissal was earlier today. All right, students who have filled in the application form and handed it in may dismiss. The last class was the class teacher, Miss Yu. She was still holding Yun Jian's application form as she spoke to the class. Yun Jian went back to her seat and left with Zhang Xiaofeng and Zhang Jian. She had only taken 2 steps when Miss Yu's shout came from behind her. Yun Jian, you haven't written down your target score. Your goal is Min City's military school. The school in Min City has requirements for results as well. Besides, going from Longmen City to Min City is considered a cross-city exam. The cutoff for getting into Min City isn't low. Miss Yu called out to Yun Jian because Yun Jian had not written down her target score for the entrance exam. It was just that a lot of things came out from the teacher's rambling. Yun Jian turned to the side. She was already carrying her shoulder bag, but her eyes were on Miss Yu as she said with a smirk, "I'm not writing down the score." Yun Jian dared to tell the class teacher that she was not writing down the score. Was she that arrogant? Was she challenging the class teacher? The students in the class shifted their gazes to Yun Jian. Most of the students were afraid of their homeroom teacher, so when Yun Jian spoke to the teacher in such a tone, the students were slightly taken aback. Why not? Even the class teacher was surprised. Because I have to go. When Yun Jian said the latter half of her sentence, there was a sense of confidence in her tone that could not be ignored. She was confident and arrogant, but no one thought that Yun Jian was spouting nonsense. Yun Jian pursed her lips and slung her shoulder bag over her shoulder as she turned and walked to the back door of the class domineeringly. Perhaps it was because of her aura, even Teacher Yu didn't make a sound as he watched Yun Jian leave. After separating from Zhang Xiaofeng and Zhang Jian at the school gate, Yun Jian headed home. Ce hadn't been home recently. He had returned to an Hun group, so Yun Jian was bored alone at home. She had just walked close to the entrance of the house because the Dong Ruan family's villa was a group of villas. In other words, other than Dong Ruan's villa, there were other villas around it. Unlike Gu Yunjian's villa, there was only one family within a radius of 8 miles. As they approached Dong Ruan's villa, Yunjian saw her mother chatting with Dong Ruan's neighbors. The rich ladies who were chatting with Qin Yiru all came from well-to-do families. It was a coincidence that Qin Yiru got to know them. They thought that Qin Yiru was a rich lady, so they gathered together to chat. Since Qin Yiru was invited, she chatted with them as well. When she saw Yunjian, Qin Yiru greeted her directly. "Xiao Jian, you're back?" Qin Yiru asked. Mom." Yunjian nodded and gathered her bag. Her delicate and pretty face attracted the attention of the rich ladies around her. "Yiru, this must be your daughter? She looks pretty." A rich lady who stood beside Qin Yiru commented as she studied Yunjian. The lady got to know Qin Yiru first before introducing Qin Yiru to the other rich ladies. The lady who spoke had a husband with the surname Yang. Mrs. Yang was a nice person and there was no sense of distance between them. Qin Yiru nodded and said proudly, "Yeah, Xiao Jian is my daughter." Chapter 982. This rich madam was purely attracted to Yunjian's beauty. Moreover, Yunjian gave off the feeling that she was the daughter of an aristocratic family. Her temperament was similar. Moreover, the people who lived here naturally couldn't be poor. Therefore, this rich madam had the intention of marrying Yunjian. Most importantly, this rich madam's son was already in his 20s. Because of his poor grades, he dropped out of school and stayed at home. He was always idling around. Her family had a lot of assets, so the rich madam's son went out to flirt with girls or bars. He was doing very well. Those women outside were all trying to get close to her son because of her family's money. Most importantly, those women were extremely poor. The rich madam didn't like them at all. Now that she saw Yunjian, a beautiful young lady with good temperament, the rich madam immediately became interested. However, just as the rich madam finished speaking, Qin Yiru smiled and rejected her tactfully. "I have always advocated for children to be free to love." Although this sentence didn't sound like an excessive rejection, everyone present could tell that it was a rejection. All right. What were we talking about just now? Let's continue." Haha. Mrs. Yang saw that the situation wasn't good, so she stood out to smooth things over. Qin Yiru looked at Mrs. Yang and revealed a grateful smile. All right. Free to love. Don't be too relaxed with your child. Don't let anything happen when the time comes. The rich madam said sharply. Although she didn't say it explicitly, her words implied that Qin Yiru was indulging Yunjian so much that Yunjian would cause trouble sooner or later. She might even get pregnant at a young age. Qin Yiru didn't like to hear this. Qin Yiru also replied symbolically, "My daughter. As her mother, I will take responsibility if anything happens to her." This sentence made the few rich ladies around them fall silent for a moment. Yunjian, who was standing at the side and hadn't said anything, narrowed her eyes and curled her lips. The smile on her face didn't fade. Her mother was no longer someone who could be trampled on. At least Qin Yiru had learned how to fight back. The topic just now didn't embarrass the people present for long. After a while, the rich ladies began to chat again. At the mention of Yunjian's age, the short rich lady who was less than 1.5 meters tall and wore a pair of 10-centimeter high heels covered her mouth with her hand and chuckled. Then, the rich lady said to Qin Yiru, "My daughter is the same age as your daughter, and she's also in the same school as your daughter. I'm just not sure if your daughter knows my daughter." As she spoke, the rich lady did not wait for Qin Yiru to reply. She chuckled a few times and then boasted to Qin Yiru with a rather proud expression, "My daughter is ranked in the top 10 in Longmen First High School. It won't be a problem to get into the best high school in Longmen City." Boasting about their children was the most common topic of conversation among parents when they gathered together. The rich lady then asked Qin Yiru, "I heard that their school requires students to set goals. I wonder which high school your daughter applied to?" The rich lady was obviously boasting about her daughter's results and asked Qin Yiru in a tone that belittled Yunjian. Her motive was to hear Qin Yiru say that Yunjian's results were not as good as her daughter's. Yunjian then looked up and answered faintly, Min City Military School. Military schools generally had a high cutoff score, especially when they were admitted to other cities. The rich lady was stunned before she looked at Yunjian in disdain. The cutoff score for military schools isn't low. Little girl, why would a girl like you go to a military school? That's where the boys go. Right, little girl, how are your results? The rich lady asked again. It's not high. Yunjian blinked. The not high made the rich lady even prouder. She pressed, how high? Chapter 983. Yunjian pressed her lips together under the madam's forceful pressure and spoke with a curl of her lips. The madam's gaze was fixed on Yunjian, as if she wanted to bore a hole through Yunjian with her stare. In fact, be it village women gathered together or wealthy madams of repute gathered together, what they talked about the most was their children. This madam had pressed Yunjian to reveal her results just now because her daughter was in the same school as Yunjian. They were in the same school and in the same grade. The madam's daughter seemed to be quite outstanding from what the madam had said. The madam had been pressing Yunjian to reveal her results because she wanted Yunjian to reveal her lousy results to show off her daughter's excellent results. Everyone present understood what the madam was trying to say when they heard what she said. Everyone knew why the madam had asked the question just now. In spite of it, everyone was dumbfounded when they heard what she said. Even Qin Yiru did not expect Yunjian to answer in such a manner. It's not high. She only got full marks for 4 subjects last time. Yunjian's exact words were. Full marks for 4 subjects was not high. Who else in the whole of Longmen Junior High School or even the whole of Longmen City could be like Yunjian, getting full marks for all 4 subjects with such results? Was this a joke? No matter how brilliant a student was, there would be times when they made mistakes. The few wealthy madams present swallowed hard when they heard Yunjian's words. The rich lady who wanted to use Yunjian to brag about her daughter's excellent results was especially stunned when she heard that. Yunjian's words were like a slap to the lady's face for what she had done just now, causing the rich lady's expression to darken. Oh my God, Yiru, your daughter is so outstanding. Mrs. Yang, who was closer to Qin Yiru, praised Yunjian loudly and from the bottom of her heart when she heard her. Qin Yiru was not overly humble when she heard it. She knew that her daughter's results were good indeed. Of course, she had to be humble. Qin Yiru nodded with a smile. This child has done well. As mothers, we can only encourage her. Mrs. Yang was closer to Qin Yiru, so she nodded in approval. Yes, I like your daughter from the bottom of my heart. She's not like that rascal of mine, fooling around all day long. Mrs. Yang and Qin Yiru then exchanged pleasantries. Yunjian, who was standing on the side, however, pressed her lips together and smiled. When Yunjian caught a glimpse of the madam who was trying to use her daughter's results to beat her, she made an excuse and left. It was obvious that Yunjian's words had embarrassed the madam. Thus, she quickly took her leave and left. Usually, people who could not find a sense of superiority in front of their peers would flee like this madam. There were many such people in reality. Let's go out together next time. Mrs. Yang invited Qin Yiru when she said goodbye to Qin Yiru. Sure, let's make an appointment next time. We'll go out together. Qin Yiru said enthusiastically. After saying goodbye to Mrs. Yang, Qin Yiru brought Yunjian home. She even mentioned Mrs. Yang midway and Qin Yiru praised her. Chapter 984. When she mentioned Mrs. Yang to Yunjian, Qin Yiru said with a smile, actually, Xiao Erwan was the one who introduced Mrs. Yang to me. She said that she was worried that I'd be bored at home alone, so she introduced Mrs. Yang to me. Mrs. Yang is a housewife. Her husband earns quite a lot, so she usually stays at home to take care of the kids. Her life is pretty easy. When Xiao Wan introduced Mrs. Yang to me last time, we got to know each other right away. Now that you're making so much money and I'm not working, it's pretty boring to stay at home, so I often find Mrs. Yang to chat with. Qin Yiru smiled as she spoke. Mrs. Yang was introduced to Qin Yiru by Dong Wan. Dong Wan was acquainted with Mrs. Yang herself. Qin Yiru, on the other hand, had already resigned. Back when Qin Yiru was working as a cleaner in New Cruise, her monthly salary was 1,500 yuan. She thought that it was exceptionally high. When she found out that her daughter was the director of New Cruise, Qin Yiru quit not long after. A part of the reason was Yun Jian and Gu Junjian. Yun Jian said that she would take care of her and Gu Junjian said the same. Both of them persuaded Qin Yiru for a long time before she resigned. Seeing how Qin Yiru was beaming, Yun Jian smiled as well. It was obvious that she was in a good mood. When Qin Yiru saw that her daughter was looking at her, she smiled and said, "When you're done with your exams, we can ask Mrs. Yang and her family out to play." Yun Jian maintained her smile. They were already at the entrance of the house. For the next month or so, Yun Jian spent her time in school while her classmates entered the final sprint. After all, the exams were coming soon. It was impossible for them not to be nervous. Compared to the other students, however, Yun Jian was nonchalant about it. During this time, Su Zetian's and Adam's injuries had improved greatly. Now, Su Zetian had taken back control of Falcon Hall from Duan Lei. Very soon, the Leopard Gang, which used to be the #1 gang in Jianghu province, was completely integrated into Falcon Hall by Su Zetian. Of course, the leader of the Leopard Gang, Han Biyao, continued to be in charge of the Leopard Gang's territory. It was just that the original Leopard Gang had become Falcon Hall. As for Han Biyao and Su Zetian's boss, it became Yun Jian. Everyone else came as usual. After taking over the Leopard Gang, Yun Jian could now be called the boss of the #1 gang in Jianghu province. All of this happened day by day. At this moment, the boss of the #1 gang in Jianghu province, the terrifying woman Rakshasa, was sitting neatly in class. A month or so of peaceful life passed as promised. Today was another Saturday. However, today was Saturday. Yun Jian sat in the classroom and waited for class to end. Because next Tuesday was May Day, which was a 3-day-long holiday, classes were held until Saturday. On Saturday, classes were dismissed like usual. When the afternoon bell rang, Yun Jian picked up her backpack. Chen Sini would be back for classes in a week. However, she was not back this week. Just as Yun Jian picked up her backpack after school, Zhang Xiaofeng walked over and pointed at the back door of the classroom. "Teacher, someone is looking for you." When Zhang Xiaofeng said that, Yun Jian turned around. Her sharp eyes happened to see the 6 people standing at the back door of the classroom. Chapter 985. It had been a long time since Yun Jian last saw Chu Ning and the others, aside from the last Qingming festival when the 6 of them came back. Even then, the 6 of them came and left quickly, not having much time to stay and talk to Yun Jian in detail. At the same time, Yun Jian roughly knew that life in the military academy was tough. Yun Jian had just picked up her bag. Usually, she was the quickest to react when school was about to end. Therefore, her classmates did not leave. Since Yun Jian was the slashing god of Team Monarch, her classmates usually paid more attention to Yun Jian's every move. Now that they heard Zhang Xiaofeng telling Yun Jian that someone was looking for Yun Jian, the class turned in unison to look at the 6 people standing at the back door of the classroom. Chu Ning was almost embarrassed by all the eyes staring at her. Yun Jian, on the other hand, could clearly see that Chu Ning and the others were tanned compared to the last time she saw them. "Heh, Yun Jian, I haven't seen you for so long, I missed you so much." Chu Ning waved at Yun Jian when she saw Yun Jian looking at her. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes at the gesture and walked toward Chu Ning. "You're finally free to come back?" Yun Jian raised a brow and asked Chu Ning in front of everyone's curious gazes. "Yeah, Yun Jian." You've never been there, so you don't know. That godforsaken place isn't a place for humans. Look at my fair skin, it's as dark as charcoal now. TSK, it's terrible. Chu Xiangnan chimed in from the side. Yun Jian turned to look and saw that Chu Xiangnan's face looked like it was smeared with charcoal. After months of being exposed to the elements and the scorching sun, Chu Xiangnan's face was unbelievably dark. Yun Jian's lips quirked up in amusement. Chu Ning, who was beside Chu Xiangnan, popped up to knock his head as usual. Silly Xiangnan, you're ugly to begin with. You're even uglier now, ha ha ha. Chu Ning did not feel that she had said anything wrong even though she had said something against her conscience. Go. Chu Xiangnan grinned. The two of them were still bickering as usual. Right, Yun Jian, we met a bunch of arrogant people over there. You don't know how arrogant they are. They're so annoying. They even compete with us every day. Chu said to Yun Jian when she thought of something else after she was done fooling around. Yes, it's that group of people. I really want to blow their heads off. Chu Xiangnan added. However, Lu Shiyun, Jiang Weiwei, Fang Xiaoran, and Hong Fan did not say a word. It was obvious that Chu Ning and Chu Xiangnan were chatterboxes. However, before Yun Jian could speak, a boy in the class jumped out in shock. He looked at Chu Ning and the rest, then at Yun Jian, and asked in horror, "Are you guys members of the legendary Team Monarch?" Yun Jian was the killing god of Team Monarch. As for Team Monarch, everyone in the class knew that it was a team made up of people who were around the same age as the students present. However, such a team had now become the Advanced Special Forces. Such an achievement was a legend even in the Z country's military. Today, the other 6 members of Team Monarch came to the school to look for Yun Jian. All 7 members of Team Monarch were standing there. Chapter 986. Everyone in the class was shocked by the boy's words. So, the 6 people standing at the door were all members of Team Monarch? Huh, you know us? Chu Xiangnan, who was still joking around with Chu Ning, was shocked when he heard the boy's words. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees the game better than the player. Chu Xiangnan had no idea that his Team Monarch had become so popular. In the mouth of this boy, he actually used the word legendary. Are you guys really from Team Monarch? The boy did not answer Chu Xiangnan's question. Instead, he looked at Chu Xiangnan in shock and disbelief. Ha! Chu Xiangnan tossed his hair and put on a cool expression. Of course. Remember, I'm the coolest in Team Monarch. Cool my *SS say that again and you'll go home and kneel on the washboard. Chu Ning pushed Chu Xiangnan away with a light push. Yun Jian stood in the classroom, but most of them had their eyes on her. There must be a lot to do in the military academy, right? Yun Jian looked at Chu Ning and the rest and asked after a long while. There are a lot of things to do. We thought we could come back once every 2 to 3 weeks, but it took us so long to come back for the second time. Lu Shiyun, who was standing beside Chu Ning and Chu Xiangnan, continued Yun Jian's words. Lu Shiyun had always been a calm person. But Yun Jian, if it's you, it won't be a problem for you to come home once a week. Once you're strong enough, you can apply to the school to do whatever you want, even if it means skipping class. Fang Xiaoran added from behind. Hearing their conversation, some of the students in the class were even more shocked. Yun Jian's ability was this strong? Yun Jian, I've been waiting for you to come to the military academy. Then, all the members of Team Monarch will be here. Chu Ning added. Hearing their conversation, some of the students in the class could not help but envy Yun Jian's friendship with Chu Ning and the rest. Why haven't any of you left after school? At that moment, the old teacher, Teacher Yu, who was passing by the classroom, noticed that none of the students had left the school. She found it strange, so she walked in from outside the classroom and asked. Due to the frequent incidents of gang fights in the school, the teachers could not help but be cautious. However, when Teacher Yu entered the classroom, a rowdy student immediately said, "Teacher, they're members of Team Monarch. They're here for Yunjian." Since Team Monarch was rather famous now, their homeroom teacher, Mr. Yu, had naturally heard of them. They came back from the military academy to visit Yunjian. "That's amazing." Another student jeered at the teacher. Teacher Yu turned to look at Yunjian. In fact, Teacher Yu did not particularly like the fact that Yunjian had lured the other members of Team Monarch to the school, namely Chu Ning and the rest who came to the classroom to look for Yunjian. Therefore, Teacher Yu looked at Yunjian with a frown. "Yunjian, since your goal is to get into the military academy, you should study hard. You can only get into the military academy if you're capable. Apart from studying, you should strengthen your body. Otherwise, the military academy's requirements are high and you're a girl. If you're too weak, they might not even accept you." In the end, Teacher Yu was trying to warn Yunjian not to play any tricks. Chapter 987. Chu Xiangnan had always said whatever was on his mind and did not know what taboo to avoid. However, when Chu Xiangnan spoke the truth openly, everyone present was completely dumbfounded by his words. What? The other 6 members of Team Monarch could not defeat Yunjian even if they worked together? Which one of the members of Team Monarch was not several times more powerful than their peers? Otherwise, they would not have been selected by Gu Junjian to join the military. The military was not a place where any ordinary person could join. More importantly, the other 6 members of Team Monarch had also become members of the Advanced Special Forces. It was the dream of countless Special Forces soldiers to join the Advanced Special Forces, and some might not even be qualified in their entire lives. Therefore, it was safe to say that every member of Team Monarch was an invincible existence to their classmates who could take on all of them alone. However, Chu Xiangnan's words just now completely shocked everyone. Teacher Yu's expression especially changed when she heard Chu Xiangnan mention Yunjian. Chu Xiangnan's words just now were like a slap to her face. Teacher Yu suddenly felt that what she said just now was rather stupid. It was that statement that a girl like Yunjian was too weak to enter the military academy. Fang Xiaoran seemed to think that it was not enough after Chu Xiangnan finished speaking. He laughed out loud and said, "That's right, none of us dare to admit it. Yeah, none of us dare to deny that. Forget the fact that the 6 of us can't defeat her. I don't think any of the instructors in our military school are her match either." "What do you mean by probably?" "It's the truth," Chu Xiangnan added with a laugh. If the students present in Teacher Yu's understanding of Yunjian's strength were only limited to rumors, then at this moment, everyone present received clear confirmation. What kind of status did a military academy's instructor have? To be able to become an instructor in a military academy, one's strength must be on par. However, even a military academy's instructor could not compare to Yunjian. All the students in the class were stunned. Even Teacher Yu was dumbfounded. My master is just that amazing. Zhang Xiaofeng had witnessed Yunjian kill the number 10 assassin on the international assassin chart, so he spoke with pride. "Let's go, Yunjian. Let's go to the restaurant. We rushed back this afternoon and I'm starving." Chu Xiangnan patted his tummy that did not have an ounce of fat on it as he led the way with a chuckle. Seeing this, Yunjian picked up her bag and followed without hesitation, completely ignoring the teacher behind her. Zhang Xiaofeng did not follow. The group of people walked out of the classroom happily, not even sparing a glance at Teacher Yu. Teacher Yu stood there awkwardly. Especially not long after Yunjian and the others walked out of the classroom, Chu Xiangnan and the others' cheeky conversation could be heard from outside the classroom. "Io, Yunjian, you don't know. Our school's instructors know that you're going to study at our military academy next semester and they're all fighting over you. They're saying that they'll snatch you to their team no matter what. Isn't that so?" Some time ago, they were fighting over which instructor you'd be transferred to next semester. A few instructors even challenged each other in school. "Say, this title of yours, it's really too awesome." Chapter 988. Since Miss Yu did not quite believe Yunjian's words just now, when Chu Xiangnan and the others walked out of the classroom and began their discussion, she purposely hollered at the top of her lungs before they went too far. They were afraid that Miss Yu, who was standing in the classroom, would not hear them. Of course, what Chu Xiangnan and the others said was the truth. When the instructors in the military school heard about Team Monarch Slashing God's achievements and the fact that Slashing God would be transferring to the military school next semester, the instructors in the military school were already fighting over her. They had even gotten into a fight not too long ago. Fortunately, the chief instructor stopped them in the end and it did not lead to any trouble. Of course, with Chu Xiangnan and the others' loud mouths, their voices could be clearly heard by their homeroom teacher, Miss Yu. Miss Yu's astonishment was indescribable. Of course, her classmates were equally stunned on the spot, unable to control themselves. Yunjian had not even entered the military school and the instructors were already fighting over her. Moreover, Miss Yu had told Yunjian in a reproachful tone that if she did not study hard or train her skills properly, it would be a problem for a girl like her to even get in due to the high threshold of the military school. But Yunjian had not even entered the military school and she had already become the most sought-after existence among the instructors. Was it not obvious that Yunjian was already the default candidate? Miss Yu knew that Yunjian was Team Monarch Slashing God, but she thought that even if Yunjian was Team Monarch Slashing God, she should follow the traditional selection method. However, from the looks of it, Yunjian's entry into the military school was already set in stone. It was no wonder that Yunjian had only written Min City Military School in her application and was not even willing to write down the target score. It turned out that she was already the default candidate. Miss Yu stood where she was, her face ashen as she listened to the voices of the few people leaving the classroom. Especially what she said just now, compared to what Chu Xiangnan and the others said, was it not a slap to her own face? Ha ha ha, Yunjian, your teacher is too much. What did I say just now? Ha ha. Chu Xiangnan began to laugh wildly as soon as he walked out of the school gate. Don't say that, I have to give you a thumbs up. Fang Xiaoran grinned and gave Chu Xiangnan a thumbs up. Very strong. Yunjian curled her lips and gave this comment. The group then walked towards the restaurant with smiles on their faces. When he brought up the matter of the military academy with Chu Ning and the others in the restaurant, Chu Ning gritted her teeth in hatred. The worst thing that happened to me in the military academy was that bunch of arrogant people. They even formed a gang. What's it called again? It's called the Invincible Gang. They even claimed to be the #1 gang in the academy or something like that. Then, they often challenged us, saying that Team Monarch was just a bunch of rookies. I'm so angry. But one of them was really strong. There was once when the 6 of us fought against him alone. Other than Wei Wei, we were all defeated. Even Wei Wei was almost injured. That's why we endured it. Chu Ning said angrily. With that, she scooped up a mouthful of rice with a spoon and chewed fiercely. It was as if the rice in her mouth was that group of people and she could not wait to tear them into pieces. That's right. Chu Xiangnan added angrily. Even so, Chu Ning and Chu Xiangnan did not ask Yunjian to help them beat up that group of people. Yunjian smiled and continued, so, in order to fight them, you've been training and turning yourselves black? Chapter 989. Black people, this was a rather vivid comparison. It should be known that before Chu Ning and the rest went to the military academy, although they had plenty of training in the army, their skin was still so fair that it was glowing. What about now? It was not that Yunjian was exaggerating, but Chu Ning and her friends were tanned. They were almost as tanned as black people and their faces looked like they had been smeared with charcoal. Don't, Yunjian, we're not as tanned as you're saying, haha. But we've indeed tanned a lot in the past few months. My sunscreen can't block out the scorching sun. Chu Ning exclaimed. After saying that, Chu Ning reached out her hand and rubbed her face hard, as if she could rub the dark skin off her face with this rubbing. Huh, you're the most obvious tanned one among us. Chu Xiangnan reached out to pinch a piece of fat on Chu Ning's face before quickly retracting his hand and teasing her with a chuckle. Go away, go away. Are you looking for a beating? I'm talking to Yunjian, Being pinched by Chu Xiangnan, Chu Ning clenched her fists and gestured at Chu Xiangnan. Alright, stop fooling around, both of you, Jiang Weiwei spoke up, stopping Chu Ning and Chu Xiangnan from fooling around. Sigh, we'll have to go back to the military academy after Labor Day. Yunjian, don't worry, we'll train well before you come to school. Chu Ning gestured at Yunjian with her fists clenched and assured Yunjian confidently. Yunjian nodded with a squint. Chu Ning and her friend's performance gave Yunjian a brand new feeling that they were working hard. It was a feeling that Yunjian appreciated very much. If there were other people, they would have been waiting for Yunjian to make a move when they saw how capable Yunjian was. However, Chu Ning and her friends did not. Even if Chu Ning and her friends could not defeat the invincible gang they mentioned, they would not back down. No one was born a powerhouse. Every powerhouse was a heaven-defying existence that had gone through countless trials and tribulations. Chu Ning and her friends took the time to visit Yunjian before they went home after dinner. They did not have much time on holiday. Other than visiting Yunjian, they had to report to Gu Junjian that they were safe and go home. After spending a few days with their families, they had to rush back to the military academy. When they bid Yunjian farewell, Chu Ning hugged Yunjian for a while. When they were about to leave, Chu Ning turned and took 2 steps before she suddenly thought of something and turned back to look at Yunjian. Oh right, Yunjian, you'll be having your midterm exams in 2 months. Once you're done, won't you have your break 2 weeks earlier than other grades? Why don't you come and play with us after the holidays? We're bored to death at school. Chu Ning stuck out her tongue as she spoke. Yeah, you're having your summer break 2 weeks earlier than us, so you can come to Min City to look for us. Just as Chu Ning finished, Jiang Weiwei's eyes flickered as she invited Yunjian. Jiang Weiwei rarely invited others, so Yunjian turned to look at her the moment she opened her mouth. Although Jiang Weiwei's behavior at the beginning was unpleasant, she had to admit that Jiang Weiwei was very friendly now. Chapter 990. Hearing Yunjian's promise, Chu Ning and the others were quite happy. Then, Chu Ning and the others went home. Yunjian had been living quite comfortably recently. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and watched Chu Ning and the others leave. Then, she pursed her lips and smiled slightly. Then, she turned around and prepared to go home. Ever since she was assassinated by Gu Nianji, Yunjian had been thinking about it. Gu Nianji's words last time were 90% true. As for the other 10%, it still needed to be investigated. But no matter what, Yunjian believed one of the things Gu Nianji said. That was, in Yulong Continent, her name had already been placed on the billboard. This billboard was not a good ranking. It was a list of assassinations. Yunjian had already told CE about this. After CE found out about this, he launched a crazy investigation together with the previous assassination. But so far, there was no conclusion. If this had happened on Earth, with Hun's influence, they would probably be able to find out the truth in an instant. But if it had happened on Yulong Continent, a continent completely unrelated to Earth, then it was hard to say. But with CE's influence, even if it was on Yulong Continent, he would still have a way. But relatively speaking, it might take a little longer. According to CE's words, if anyone dared to assassinate his woman, even if they had to hide in outer space, he would find them and make them suffer a fate worse than death. As soon as she walked into the house, Yunjian saw a tall figure standing in the house. Yunjian did not need to look to recognize that this person was Gu Xian. Gu Xian, who had dyed his hair black, was much more handsome than before. He no longer had the red, yellow, blue, and green hair that did not suit him in the first place. With his short black hair, Gu Xian looked a little like a fresh campus boy. Seeing Yunjian coming in, Gu Xian stood up from the table and strode to Yunjian, exclaiming in delight, "Sis, you're back? Yun Jian nodded when she saw Gu Xian and placed her bag on the stool. Xiao Jian, you just came home? Have you had dinner? Qin Yiru came out of the kitchen with an apron on and bubbles on her hands, looking like she was washing the dishes with dishwasher. Yes, Yun Jian answered Qin Yiru and turned to Gu Xian. She waited for Gu Xian to speak. Based on the way Gu Xian looked at her just now, Yun Jian knew that he must have something to tell her. As expected, when Qin Yiru entered the kitchen again, Gu Xian looked at Yun Jian and chuckled foolishly before scratching his head and telling Yun Jian, "Sis, I'm going back to school tomorrow. Do you want to come with me? You have a 3-day break on Labor Day. Since it's near our school, there'll be an international racing competition tomorrow night. It's a rare opportunity, so do you want to come with me, sis?" Gu Xian was officially inviting Yun Jian to participate in the competition. What Gu Xian meant was that he was inviting Yun Jian to go abroad to watch the international racing competition. Yun Jian had been abroad before, so she had a passport that allowed her to leave anytime. Gu Xian was probably aware of this, which was why he invited her. Where is it? Yun Jian looked up slightly and pressed her lips together before asking softly. Maryland, Country M. Gu Xian gave her an address quickly. When Gu Xian gave her the address, however, Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Was this not where Alluring Witch's Rongyao company was located? Chapter 991. Qin Yiru was more at ease now that Yun Jian was going out. Although it was a little dangerous overseas, Qin Yiru could still accept it since Gu Xian would be accompanying her. Leaving without further ado, Gu Xian booked the plane tickets early the next morning and took a flight with Yun Jian to Maryland in Country M at noon. Of the 3 buddies who came back with Gu Xian, other than Shenjia, the other 2 had already returned to Country M. As for Shenjia, he was sent to the hospital after being beaten up by Yun Jian and Ce and had yet to recover. It was impossible for him to go to school in the near future. Of course, Yun Jian was already giving Gu Xian a lot of face by not killing Shenjia when he kicked Qin Yiru back then. Therefore, there were only Yun Jian and Gu Xian on the flight for this trip. Since Ce had returned to an Hun group, the students in the class were probably buried in their homework during the 3-day holiday of Labor Day. After all, the senior high school entrance examination was just around the corner. In such a tense atmosphere, most of them were struggling with piles of test papers. Except for Yun Jian, of course. Not only did she not stay at home to do her homework, she had even gone overseas. If her classmates knew about this, they would spit out blood. Of course, the whole school knew that Yun Jian did not do her homework. Even the homeroom teacher could not do anything about it. "Sis, are you thirsty?" "I'll get you a drink if you're thirsty," Gu Xian said, afraid that Yun Jian would be thirsty after such a long flight. "I'm not thirsty," Yun Jian replied with a smile and pressed her lips together. "All right," Gu Xian replied with a nod. Yun Jian and Gu Xian set off at noon from Longmen City to Maryland in Country M and arrived at about 3 in the afternoon. However, there was a time difference between Country Z and Country M. It was supposed to be 3:00 in the afternoon in Country Z, but it was almost 8:00 in the evening in Country M's Maryland. The time difference between Longmen City and Maryland was not huge, so Maryland was not the furthest away from Longmen City. Of course, it was already 8:00 in the evening when they arrived in Maryland. At this time, the race was about to start. Car racing was popular in Gu Xian's school, and the real race would only start at night. It could be said that Yun Jian and Gu Xian arrived on time. However, Gu Xian didn't take Yun Jian to the international circuit first. Instead, he took Yun Jian to her school. The university that Gu Xian studied in was a famous one, and it had been a long time since it was founded. Gu Xian was not planning to take part in today's international race. In addition, Gu Xian's current driving skills were not good enough for him to take part in such a race. In spite of this, Gu Xian had rushed back from Country Z to watch today's race enthusiastically. Other than being very interested in the race, there was another reason. He had a buddy who was going to take part. It was an honor for Guxian's buddy to be able to take part in an international race that only the world's top racers were qualified to take part in. Although Guxian's buddy did not follow Guxian to country Z, he was Guxian's best buddy. Sis, I'll introduce you to some of my buddies later. Guxian turned to speak to Yunjian. They had just finished speaking when they arrived at the entrance of Guxian's school. Guxian's buddies were all from country Z. Even if they were studying overseas, they were used to hanging out with people from their own country. When Guxian saw the group of people, he was already waving and walking over with Yunjian. Hi. My Xiao Xian, you're back. Among the people standing at the school entrance, a burly man came over to Guxian with open arms. Chapter 992. This burly man was Guxian's best buddy. He was also the one who would be participating in the international racing competition tonight. Therefore, he could be considered to be one of the more popular ones among this group of people. Even in Guxian's school, this man's presence was still very strong. It could be said that this man was the role model of the people of country Z. Of course, in the school, there was no lack of people who saw that Guxian was from country Z. They would wantonly oppress them. Guxian's buddy, on the other hand, looked more mature. The man's name was Dan Tianxing, and he was also a senior racer. In his buddy's eyes, Guxian was still a virgin who had never interacted with girls before. Not to mention appearing in front of everyone with Yunjian like today. Therefore, Dan Tianxing felt that it was strange, and that was why he asked that question just now. F***ck off, she's my sister. Guxian walked up and directly gave Dan Tianxing a headshot. Of course, it was just a joke between friends. They didn't really fight. Sister? F***ck, little Xian, I keep feeling that you've changed. Tell me, what did you experience after returning to China? Also, you actually dyed your hair black. Dan Tianxing suddenly reacted. He walked around Guxian a few times and asked loudly. After saying that, Dan Tianxing looked at Yunjian's slender body again. He was shocked and asked Guxian, and you have another sister. How is it? Isn't this hairstyle cooler than the previous one? Huh, also, who can't have a sister? So what if I have another sister? If you have the guts, ask your mother to give birth to another one. Guxian laughed and teased. As he said that, Guxian turned to look at Yunjian. Then, he introduced Dan Tianxing to Yunjian. Sister, he's just a blockhead. Don't lower yourself to his level. Other than being good at racing, he has nothing else to show off. Haha. Guxian's words made Yunjian smile. Ha ha ha. Dan Tianxing scratched his head, then reached out his hand to Yunjian. Hello, little Xian's sister. Seeing this, Yunjian didn't reach out her hand. Instead, she nodded and said, hello. Then, Guxian introduced Yunjian to his other buddies. His name is Wu Dazhuang, his name is Zhu Zilin. Guxian's friends were mostly gangsters. Of course, they were all from country Z. Even if Guxian's friends who came from Z country, he would still make friends with his own countrymen. This was also a principle that was basically unchanging's principle after everyone got to know each other. Dan Tianxing said, alright, we can go to the racetrack now. My race will start soon. Xian's. There were many female cheerleaders on the racing track or in other kinds of competitions. Therefore, Dan Tianxing wanted Yunjian to be his cheerleader and cheer him on. Yunjian was pretty, so Dan Tianxing thought that if a beautiful girl like Yunjian cheered him on, it would definitely increase his popularity. But just as Dan Tianxing was thinking about this, Guxian suddenly said, by the way, Tianxing, do you know if there's a way to let someone join the race in the middle of tonight's race? Guxian wanted Yunjian to participate in the race. However, Dan Tianxing and the others wouldn't consider this at all. Chapter 993. To be honest, with Guxian's ability, if he wanted to participate in the international racing competition tonight, he was still far from enough. The reason why Dan Tiansheng could participate in tonight's international racing competition was purely because of his connections. In this day and age, nothing could be done without connections. Dan Tiansheng's own strength was quite good. With connections and outstanding strength, it was inevitable that Dan Tiansheng would be able to participate. After hearing Gu Xian's words, Dan Tiansheng thought that Gu Xian wanted to participate in the competition himself, so Dan Tiansheng was silent for a while before he spoke again. Little Xian, if you want to participate in tonight's competition, it's not impossible. I'll see if I can pull some strings and arrange for you to. Before he could finish his words, Gu Xian immediately interrupted. As he spoke, he pointed at Yun Jian and said, "No, I'm not participating. It's my sister. If you can arrange it, you can arrange a race for her." When he was driving Yun Jian's Ferrari sports car and almost lost his life due to a brake failure, it was Yun Jian who robbed someone else's sports car and saved him. At that time, Yun Jian's driving skills had caused an uproar. At that time, Yun Jian's driving skills were not as simple as just racing. Gu Xian was now 100% confident that Yun Jian's driving skills were definitely better than his buddy Dan Tiansheng's. With such results, it would be a pity if she didn't participate in today's international racing competition. Therefore, Gu Xian wanted to compete for a spot for Yun Jian. However, when Gu Xian said this, Dan Tiansheng and Gu Xian's other buddies were all dumbfounded. WH. What? My little Xian, are you stupid? Are you out of your mind? Do you know how dangerous racing is? You actually want your sister to participate? You. After Dan Tiansheng reacted, he looked at Yun Jian in surprise and said to Gu Xian. However, before Dan Tiansheng could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by Gu Xian. Tiansheng, do you think I'm stupid? Do I look like the kind of person who would harm my sister? Gu Xian purposely kept him in suspense. Little sister, right? Haha. As Gu Xian spoke, he looked at Yun Jian and continued, besides, you must want to participate too, right? After all, today's competition is international. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and smiled. She said indifferently, I'm fine with anything. She had no interest in taking part in the race or not. Yun Jian wasn't here for the race. Yun Jian came here simply to have a look at Rongyao Company. After all, this was her company from her previous life. Although she had given full authority to the demoness, it was still a company that bore her name. Of course, she could not ignore it. Look, even my sister said she wants to participate. Hurry up and get her a spot. Gu Xian made up a story that Yun Jian wanted to participate, and then said to Dan Tiansheng with a smile. Little Xian, it's not that I don't believe you, but... You want me to believe that your sister can drive a race car? I really don't believe that. You're a racer yourself. You must know how important it is to be a racer. It's not that I'm looking down on your sister, but, can your sister really drive a race car? Her body is too thin and weak. Dan Tiansheng frowned and said. Just as he said this, he was interrupted by Gu Xian. Pfft, I knew you would say that. Huh, just because you said that. The last time I raced with someone, my brakes failed. Do you know who saved me? It was my sister. I can guarantee that there is no racer in this world who can do that. Chapter 994. In the ears of Dan Tiansheng and the others, Gu Xian's words were like being hit by a huge wave. That kind of feeling wasn't something that ordinary people could understand. Instinctively, Dan Tiansheng and the others thought that Yun Jian was simply following her brother Gu Xian to watch the racing. But when Gu Xian exaggerated what happened last time, Dan Tiansheng and the others opened their mouths wide, as if they had seen a ghost. The few people present were all racers, so everyone was very clear about the importance of a qualified racer's physical fitness. But what about Yun Jian? Yun Jian had gained a lot of weight compared to when she had just been reborn. Of course, according to Yun Jian's body when she had just been reborn, she could be described as skinny as a match. And now, although Yin Jian had gained a lot of weight, her body was still curvaceous. She had the standard figure of someone who looked thin with clothes on but was muscular without clothes. She looked quite thin, so Dan Tianxing and the others didn't suspect her at all. Moreover, racers nowadays were generally men. After all, racing was a profession that put one's life on the line at any time. So, most people in this industry were men. And Yin Jian, not only was she thin, but she was also a girl. A girl racing? What kind of joke was that? But when everyone heard Gu Xian's words, they didn't think it was a joke and found it funny. Oh my God. Little Xian, your sister is too amazing. Dan Tianxing's reaction was the most intense. He looked at Yun Jian and made exaggerated movements with his hands. After that, Dan Tianxing patted his chest and said, I'll find someone to try this for you. But if it doesn't work, then I really can't do anything, no problem. It's already very good that you're willing to help my sister. You're a good brother. Gu Xian punched Dan Tianxing's chest hard and laughed loudly. Hee, okay, little sister, let's go. I'll drive you to the racing track. Let's go there earlier. Dan Tianxing turned his head and called Yun Jian little sister. Then, he laughed out loud. Yun Jian didn't mind. Although Dan Tianxing called her little sister, she also felt strange when she heard it. The racetrack was not far from here. Shan Tiancheng drove the car and soon took everyone to the racetrack. During the race, the organizers of the racetrack would prepare their own sports cars. Therefore, Shan Tiancheng's van could carry many people at once. As soon as they entered the racing track, everyone was shocked by the lively atmosphere in front of them. Whether it was the spectator stand or the racing track, they were a dozen times larger than Longmen City's racetrack. The scale was also much larger. Let's sit over there for a while. It hasn't started yet. Dan Tianxing had just entered the arena when he led everyone to the viewing platform. You guys go ahead first. I have something to do, Yun Jian said. She pursed her red lips and waved her phone. Little sister, what else do you want? Dan Tianxing was surprised. After all, Yun Jian was unfamiliar with this place. What could she possibly have to do? Sister Jian. Just as everyone was surprised that Yun Jian had something to do, a crisp and mature female voice rang out. Yun Jian knew that Temptress must be here once she heard it, so she turned around. Temptress had actually seen her current body before. She had also bumped into Temptress not too long ago, so it was not surprising that Temptress could recognize her now. An enchanting woman was walking toward them. She was Temptress. Temptress came to Yun Jian in a few steps. However, when Dan Tianxing and the others saw the demonic woman clearly, their faces instantly froze, and even their breathing stopped. Rongyao Company's CEO? You. Are you one of the organizers of this race? Why are you here? Dan Tianxing's face froze at the sight. When everyone recovered, they were even more terrified. Why was Rongyao Company's CEO, Temptress, here? Chapter 995. Alluring Temptress had a hot body. Her perfect figure was slender and seductive. Coupled with alluring Temptress's face, she exuded an extraordinary aura no matter which angle one looked at her from. Unlike Snake Lizard's seductiveness, Alluring Temptress was just like her name, a living alluring temptress. Her codename was Alluring Temptress and she usually referred to herself as Alluring Temptress. In other words, she did not have a surname. Everyone in the underworld knew that she was called Alluring Temptress. Rongyao Company's CEO, Alluring Temptress. Dan Tianxing and his group studied at a local university, so they knew a thing or two about this place. Rongyao Company's CEO, Alluring Temptress, frequented events as well. Even if they had not seen her before, they could often see her in the headlines of Country M's international newspapers. They also heard that Rongyao Company was one of the biggest organizers of tonight's international racing event. Therefore, when Alluring Temptress appeared and Dan Tianxing and his group recognized her, they watched her walk up to Yun Jian and call her Sister Jian. It was already a miracle that Dan Tianxing and his group were not scared to death. Since they had come with Yun Jian, Alluring Temptress turned to nod at him when Dan Tianxing exclaimed in surprise when he looked at her. Alluring Temptress was no doubt the most successful female entrepreneur. Dan Tianxing and his group had long discussed Alluring Temptress and viewed her as their idol. Therefore, when Alluring Temptress nodded at him, Dan Tianxing felt like his idol had taken a second look at him. Gu Xian, who was standing at the side, was also stunned by the scene before him. How did his younger sister know? Rongyao Company's CEO, Alluring Temptress? What kind of status did Alluring Temptress have? What about Yun Jian? To Dan Tianxing and his group, she was only Gu Xian's younger sister. At most, she was a student from an unknown and poor place in country Z. How did these two people who had nothing to do with each other in the first place know each other? While Dan Tianxing, Gu Xian, and the rest were stupefied, Alluring Temptress was already in front of Yun Jian. Sister Jian, Temptress called out to Yun Jian again. Yes. Yun Jian nodded slightly. Yun Jian nodded and winked at the demonic woman. Then, she led the way to the viewing platform. Let's sit over there for a while. All right. The demoness was very obedient to Yun Jian. Seeing that the demoness followed Yun Jian over there, Dan Tianxing originally thought that it was time to enter the racetrack, but in the end, he still followed Yun Jian to sit on the spectator stand. Demoness. The CEO of Rongyao Company was a witch. Their idol. He sat on the spectator stand and watched the competition for a while. Dan Tianxing's match was about to arrive and he had to leave. The demoness beside her suddenly stood up and turned to look at Yun Jian. Her tall and slender figure gave off an enchanting and charming feeling. Temptress, on the other hand, turned to ask Yun Jian, Sister Jian, how about we have a match? 2 years ago, when Yun Jian was still slaying God, she often raced with Alluring Temptress. Back then, Alluring Temptress was still famous in the racing industry, which was also why Dan Tianxing idolized her. It was just that after slaying God disappeared, Alluring Temptress stopped racing. The people in the underworld were all wondering what had caused the demoness to stop the thrilling racing that she loved the most. No one knew the outcome, though. Now, the CEO of Rongyao Company, a racer who once dominated the world, was inviting Yun Jian to race? Chapter 996. Fortunately, no one recognized Demoness. Otherwise, based on her popularity, all the racers who loved racing would have screamed and screamed in surprise. The once famous racer, Demoness, had already retired from the scene. When Demoness became a racer, she had just started running Rongyao Company. Every racer wanted to race with Demoness, but there were only a handful of racers who could race with her. Those who had raced with Demoness before would never have the chance to race with her again. Even so, there were still countless people who wanted to race against the famous Demoness. However, there was one exception. Whenever that person appeared, Demoness would definitely race with her until the end. After hundreds and thousands of races, both of them were never tired. Apart from that person, Demoness had never invited anyone else to race with her. That was why Dan Tianxing and the rest were stunned. However, no one had ever seen the person who was qualified to race with Demoness hundreds and thousands of times. They only knew that the person had long hair and was a woman. However, every time that person appeared in front of everyone, she wore a mask, revealing only a pair of big, black eyes. No one knew who she was. They only knew that she was Demoness' regular racer teammate. Demoness would be wherever she was. The most mysterious thing was that the person's racing skills were even better than Demoness. They were not on the same level. For such a legendary person, the people in the industry only knew about her long hair. Another thing was that Demoness called her SS. After SS became popular on the racing track, countless paparazzi and reporters tried to dig up her background. However, their efforts were to no avail. No one knew who SS was. However, in the racing industry, countless racing fans regarded SS as their idol. Demonis retired from the racing industry after SS' disappearance. At that time, countless racing fans were thoroughly disappointed. However, the people in the industry could not figure it out no matter how hard they racked their brains. That was to piece the two English words together and find a Chinese font that existed on the international leaderboard, slaying God. Demonis had been out of the racing circle for a long time, so when Demonis stood up and turned to look at Yun Jian, personally inviting Yun Jian to race, Dan Tianqing's back straightened. Gu Xian's eyes lit up. He was terrified and panicked because other than the legendary SS, no one else had ever been invited by the witch. But what if Dan Tianqing and Gu Xian believed that Yun Jian was an SS? How was this possible? This must be a coincidence. Perhaps it was because Yun Jian was really outstanding? Good. We haven't had a match for 2 years. Let's have a good time today. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and smiled. Originally, Yun Jian did not plan to race. She came to Country M to see the situation of Rongyao Company. She was, after all, the chairman of Rongyao Company. Now that she had handed the Rongyao Company over to that Demonis, she could not just ignore it. 2 years? Wait, the SS who raced with Demonis had also gone missing 2 years ago. Demonis had not raced since then. There were only a handful of people who had raced with Demonis. If that was the case, then Yun Jian who had raced with Demonis, isn't that the legendary SS that even the Demonis couldn't compete with? But how was that possible? Yun Jian was an SS? This. Chapter 997. While Dan Tianqing and the others were thinking about it, Yun Jian and Alluring which had already hopped nimbly from the spectator stand to the flat ground. Yun Jian's agility and dexterity gave Dan Tianqing and the others a shock. Dan Tianqing had even forgotten that he was going to participate in the racing competition. Xiao Xian, who's your younger sister? She even knows Rongyao Company's CEO. Moreover, from the way she jumped down from the stairs just now, it seems that her skills aren't bad. Dan Tianqing sighed deeply and then said with a pout. What are you thinking? No matter who she is, she's my younger sister. Gu Xian said after rapping his buddy Dan Tianqing's head. Gu Xian paused for a beat before continuing. Xiao Jian is an amazing girl indeed. She's an advanced special forces soldier in my dad's military now. Dan Tianqing was not from Longmen City Norja province but he was from Country Z. He did not know much about the military, nor did he know anything about Team Monarch. However, Dan Tianqing knew one thing: advanced special forces soldiers. Those who could become advanced special forces soldiers were undoubtedly the best of the best. Therefore, when Gu Xian finished speaking, Dan Tianqing had already gone up to Gu Xian and wrapped his arm around Gu Xian's shoulder, exclaiming in shock and confusion. What? Advanced Special Forces soldier? Your younger sister? F***CK. As Dan Tianqing said this, he was stunned for a moment. Then, he reacted. You're amazing, Xiao Xian. You even found yourself an Advanced Special Forces soldier's younger sister. Your sister is actually a member of the Advanced Special Forces. Just as Dan Tianqing was speaking up to this point, Dan Tianqing's expression changed. Gu Xian reached out his hand and pulled off his buddy Dan Tianqing's hand from his shoulder. Just as he was about to reply to Dan Tianqing, he heard a voice coming from the radio. Brother Dan Tianqing, oh my god, it's Rongyao Company's CEO who retired from racing earlier. Alluring demon, you're back in racing? Am I seeing things? Normally, the host of this international racing competition would be mature and steady. But when he heard the exclamations coming from the broadcast, it wasn't hard to see how shocking the return of Demonis to the racing circle was. The shocked voice that came from the broadcast was a female voice. Because of the return of the demonic woman, the voice sounded very shocked at this moment. However, not long after this woman's voice sounded, a man snatched the woman's loudspeaker. Then, the passionate and bold voice of another host could be heard. After 2 years, our top racer, Siren, the president of Rongyao Company, has returned to the racing circle. Next, we'll be competing with our top racer, Demonis, against a young girl from Z country who calls herself Yunjian. Let's give them a warm welcome. The male and female hosts were both from the United States, and they spoke in English. Of course, whether it was Yunjian, Siren, or Gu Xian and Dan Tiansheng, who had lived in Country M for a long time, English was not a problem at all. The hosts were obviously using Demonis to hype things up. The atmosphere in the venue was not very lively at first, but when the host said that, the tens of thousands of people sitting in the spectator stand screamed when they heard that the top racer, Demonis, had returned. Chapter 998. Oh my God. Temptress is back in the racing circle. Am I seeing things? Ah, I'm her #1 fan. In the spectator stands, there were already people who gripped their companions' shoulders in excitement and shook them with guffaws. Temptress is back. The atmosphere reached its climax in an instant. Of course, other than Temptress, there were also people talking about Yunjian. Who's that girl who calls herself Yunjian? What right does she have to compete with Temptress? Other than SS back then, I'm not convinced by anyone. Yeah. Who's that girl called Yunjian? How dare she compete with Lord Temptress of the racing circle? Get out of the racing circle. That's right, Yunjian, get out of the racing circle. After the voices of reverence for the Demonis rang out, another voice soon reached the peak. It meant that Yunjian should get out of the racing circle. Ever since the match between SS and Temptress, any racer who competed with Temptress would be scolded by the fans of the two teams, telling them to get out of the racing circle, saying that they were unworthy of being a racer. Wait a minute, for example, this kind of sound was like the wind and clouds were surging. At the moment, Yunjian, who was spurned and asked to leave the racing circle by the audience, was wearing a helmet to prevent accidents. The helmet could save a racer's life in some accidents, so the regular racing channels would usually let the racers wear it. Sister Jian, go easy on me later. I haven't played this game for 2 years, but don't let me lose too badly. At least give me some face. Ha. Temptress winked coquettishly at Yunjian and teased with a chuckle. Tonight's racing competition was international, so the organizers would provide their own sports cars. Of course, the quality of the sports cars provided by the organizers would not be bad. To be fair, the 2 sports cars provided by the organizers were of the same brand and model. In other words, the racers could only win with their own skills. Let's rely on our own abilities, Yunjian said with a slight smile. Haha. We can go to the starting track and get ready. Siren wasn't angry. She laughed heartily and drove the Bentley sports car provided by the organizers with Yunjian. They slowly drove from the inspection station to the track. It wasn't until Yunjian and the demonic woman drove out of the inspection station that some of the staff members standing in the same place began to discuss with disdain. TSK, who does that girl think she is? Let's just rely on our own abilities. Did she really think that she could win against the Demonis? Does she think she's an SS? Demonis is just giving her some face. She really thinks she's a divine racer. Can she beat Demonis? This is simply daydreaming. Just as the crew members were discussing Yunjian and alluring which, they saw 2 Bentley sports cars stomping on the accelerator and speeding away from the starting point on the other side of the track with the referee's gunshot. If one wanted to distinguish which Bentley was in which Yunjian was sitting, one only needed to look at the color of the car. Yunjian's car was black while Seductress's was silver gray. Just as they sped out of the starting point, Seductress' silver gray sports car was 1 step ahead of Yunjian. Seeing this, the staff members who were talking about Yunjian's arrogance grew even more excited. However, the discussion stopped abruptly midway. In the next second, the staff members were so shocked that their jaws dropped. Chapter 999. Before Yun Jian and Seductress stepped on the accelerator and the car sped away, the people in the spectator stands were almost going crazy. Such voices could be said to have penetrated the whole venue. Seductress will win. Yun Jian, get out of the racing circle. Faced with such aggressive voices, Gu Xian, who was still standing in place, and Shan Tiansheng, who was still standing in place and had not yet prepared for the race, looked at the scene in front of them with a terrible expression. After all, Yun Jian was with them. Especially Gu Xian. Gu Xian had already regarded Yun Jian as his own sister. When he suddenly heard Yun Jian being cursed by everyone present, Gu Xian's expression was the worst. His own sister was being cursed and asked to get out of the racing circle. As her brother, he certainly felt bad. In addition to this, Gu Xian was also very worried about Yun Jian. After all, Seductress was once the king of the racing circle. It could be said that except for the legendary SS, Seductress had never lost to anyone. Therefore, under such circumstances, it was normal for Gu Xian to be worried. Yun Jian's racing skills were amazing, and Gu Xian had already experienced it. But compared to Seductress, at this moment, the two Bentleys driven by Yun Jian and Seductress had already sped out of the finish line. Almost at the same time, Seductress' silver-gray Bentley took the lead and rushed out of the starting point. As a result, the screams in the venue became even more obvious. Ah! Seductress will win. Yun Jian, get out of the racing circle. Gu Xian's hands were tightly clenched together. Listening to the people around him belittling Yun Jian with such words, as her brother, he was really, for the first time, Gu Xian felt powerless. When Gu Xian lowered his head and raised it slightly, a frightening scene suddenly appeared in the eyes of everyone present. The two sports cars had arrived at the turning point one after the other. However, just as the two sports cars reached the turning point, the black Bentley that was lagging behind suddenly made a sharp turn. In the next second, it stepped on the accelerator just as the silver-gray sports car driven by the demoness in front of it began to brake. It was usually unrealistic to overtake on a curve because it was very dangerous. Even when driving, it was very dangerous to overtake on a curve. Moreover, when racing, almost all of them were sprinting at full speed. When they encountered a curve, not only did they not step on the brakes, they even had to step on the accelerator to speed forward. Such a person was simply one of a kind. However, Yun Jian was one of them. It was also this crazy action that made countless audience members hold onto the railing tightly and raise their butts slightly. They widened their eyes and looked at this scene in shock and horror. Did she not want to live anymore? Chi. When they reached the curve, the black Bentley driven by Yun Jian stepped on the accelerator like a flash of lightning. In the shortest time, the car used the highest speed to fiercely overtake the silver-gray Bentley that had slowed down. After overtaking the silver-gray Bentley, the black Bentley driven by Yun Jian turned a corner and finally disappeared from everyone's sight. However, it appeared on the large screen in the spectator stands. Silence. There was a deathly silence. Soon after, there were screams from the audience that were boiling with excitement. Oh my God! She actually overtook Demoness? How is this possible? Other than SS, Demoness has never been overtaken, but today she actually. The voices that were cursing Yun Jian to get out of the racing circle suddenly disappeared. What followed was a shocking scream. At this moment, whether it was the group of staff members who had mocked Yun Jian, Dan Tiansheng, Gu Xian, all the audience in the spectator stands, or the racers in the lounge, all of them widened their eyes. This scene was almost unbelievable. Chapter 1000. In spite of it, Yun Jian was already driving the black Bentley sports car ahead of alluring which by leaps and bounds while the crowd was howling with excitement. But Little Demon was not to be outdone. After Yun Jian took a huge lead, she stepped on the accelerator to catch up. At this moment, Little Demon had a very wild feeling. She felt that she had found her initial joy and passion for racing. Sure enough, racing with an SS car was the most exciting. There was no other. Little Demon was full of passion at this moment. The audience in the spectator stands were so enthusiastic that they could not control themselves. Although alluring Demoness and Yunjian's race was interrupted midway, none of the racers objected when they saw alluring Demoness making a comeback. But the scene that no one expected was that Yunjian actually took a huge lead in the beginning of the race. Furthermore, this was under the circumstance that the Demoness had rushed out of the starting point first. Guxian saw that Yunjian had overtaken Little Demon. It was as if he had seen hope. At this moment, Guxian's heart was filled with excitement. Yunjian will win. Yunjian will win. Guxian looked at the battle in front of him and shouted unconsciously. After shouting twice, Guxian realized that no one around him was paying attention to him. Even when they heard his voice, the people around him glanced at him coldly. But Guxian did not stop shouting. He elbowed Dan Tianxing in the stomach and then forced Dan Tianxing to shout with him. The strength of a few people could sometimes drive the whole audience. Guxian's shouting also stirred up the atmosphere. Gradually, when they saw that Yunjian had overtaken Little Demon, some people also shouted with Guxian. For a moment, the audience in the spectator stands were divided into two factions. The audience was shouting and screaming at the same time. The atmosphere had reached its climax. However, at this moment, someone pointed at the screen and shouted loudly, "Look! There!" This person's voice was quickly drowned out by the shouts of the audience in the spectator stands. However, everyone present saw a scene that scared them out of their wits. At this time, the sports car driven by Yunjian and the witch was about to reach the finish line. Although Siren was not as fast as Yunjian, she followed closely behind Yunjian's black Bentley. Seeing that the seductive woman's sports car was about to overtake Yunjian's sports car in terms of speed. Just as the audience's hearts were tightly clenched and their blood was boiling. However, the black Bentley suddenly stepped on the brakes. The sports car was originally moving at a terrifying speed of over 200 kilometers per hour. If he suddenly slammed on the brakes, the car and the people inside would be forcefully braked by the inertia and be sent flying. "Is she crazy?" a member of the audience yelled in horror. At this moment, a shocking turn of events suddenly occurred. The moment the car braked, the black Bentley began to slide to the left. At the same time, due to inertia, it spun and slid crazily. It spun twice as fast as the original speed of the sports car, and was flung away. With this toss, the hearts of everyone present almost fell out. Was he going to screw up? Everyone present could not help but think so. However, just as they thought so, they saw the black Bentley driven by Yunjian bounce to the finish line at the speed of a spring after being flung away. When it reached the finish line, the black Bentley spun a few times on the spot and suddenly came to a stop. Yunjian won. Siren reached the finish line 10 seconds later than Yunjian. However, at this moment, no cheers could be heard. The people present could no longer express their inner feelings with the word shock. Why did the way the black Bentley used just now feel so familiar? SS. I've seen that move in SS car before. She's SS, she's SS. Someone suddenly reacted and pointed out the mystery. Hearing this person's words, everyone present stood up in fright. Yunjian was actually SS. Chapter 1001. Those who had looked down on Yunjian, including those who had insulted Yunjian and demanded that Yunjian get out of the racing circle when they heard about the race between Yunjian and Siren. Those who had checked the station and said that Yunjian was daydreaming if she thought she could beat Siren. Guxian, Dan Tianxing, and the others. Everyone's eyes widened in horror as they stared at the scene in front of them in astonishment. The whole place was silent. Everyone had the same expression on their faces, stunned, stunned. At this moment, no one's expression was normal. Especially those who had looked down on Yunjian. They were all dumbfounded. Were they seeing things? The girl who looked like she was under 18 years old was actually SS? But at this moment, they had no choice but to believe it. Today was an international racing competition, and the people who came were all racing fans who had watched countless races. Many of the spectators were fans who had watched the SS race back in the day, and they were familiar with the SS driving skills. Wasn't Yunjian's move the same as SS' usual move during the final sprint? As racing fans, they couldn't be wrong. After a moment of silence, the crowd began to roar and seethe. SS' appearance was even more shocking than the return of the top racer, Siren. And the most shocking thing of the day was that SS, who had been famous in the racing circle but had never shown her face, was actually a young girl. But if SS was so young now, then 2 years ago, how old was she? 13? 14? Oh my God. Everyone present was so shocked by this that they almost stopped breathing. At this moment, the driver's seat of the black Bentley parked at the finish line opened. Yunjian's flawless face appeared in front of the crowd's eyes. SS. 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 On the grandstand, someone led the crowd to shout at the top of their lungs. The atmosphere was 100 times hotter than before. Yunjian frowned slightly when she heard the orderly cheers. Her delicate face made people feel even more excited. Not long after, the Demoness silver-gray Bentley also braked at the finish line. She got out of the silver-gray Bentley in a rather handsome manner. Then, she swung the car door and closed it. The demonic woman laughed bluntly before she walked up to Yunjian. She reached out her hand and stroked her hairline. Then, she said to Yunjian as she walked. Sister Jian, your driving skills are still amazing even after 2 years of absence. Haha. You've improved. Yunjian narrowed her eyes and commented. Yunjian never flattered people, but whatever came out of her mouth was definitely the truest words. The Demoness driving skills had indeed improved. If it was 2 years ago, she would have been left far behind. Ha. Of course. Demoness was not bashful from Yunjian's compliment. Instead, she admitted it openly. As they spoke, Yunjian and Alluring which walked out of the racetrack side by side. Just as they exited the track, a large group of reporters who had already brought their cameras swarmed toward them, all of them dashing toward Yunjian. Hello. May I ask if you're SS who suddenly disappeared 2 years ago? Do you know that Demoness disappeared from the racing scene after you disappeared? Can you explain why you left the racing scene back then? May I ask if you'll make a comeback? Why didn't you show your real face before? You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.